From the gridiron to the hardwood, James Mesh breaks it all down. It's time for another episode of Cleats and Sneaks.
Welcome into this first episode of Cleats and Sneaks. I am your host, James Mesh, and this podcast is going to be all about the NFL and the NBA. And what a better time to be talking about football and the NFL right now, as we now know who's going to be in the Super Bowl. Of course, it's going to be once again the Kansas City Chiefs versus the San Francisco 49ers. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, ESPN Southwest Louisiana Sports Station, and turn on the notifications. That way you know whenever we upload. Starting off with the first game, the AFC Championship, the Baltimore Ravens versus the Kansas City Chiefs. It kind of felt like with this one, you were hoping that this was going to be Lamar's year. I know a lot of people have kind of been fatigued of seeing Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes make it to the Super Bowl each and every year, it feels like. And it kind of felt like it was a good game to start off. It was kind of seemed like it was going to be a shootout. We saw 3 touchdowns in the first 4 drives as Kansas City ended up going up 14-7, 11 minutes into the second quarter. For those first 2 drives for Kansas City, it was pretty smooth. You saw a nice quick passes going right away to Rashee Rice, going right away to Travis Kelce, and you even saw a lot of the run game from Isaiah Pacheco. It led to 2 touchdowns by Kansas City, short ones, including a touchdown for Travis Kelce, where he kind of ran an out and up on top of a safety in Kyle Hamilton, who a lot of people were very down on, but I have been so high on throughout his young career. He's made a lot of good plays. He's kind of been a ball hawk, somewhat like Marcus Williams, who is also on the Ravens as a safety as well, but he kind of got caught and Travis Kelce got the better of him as Patrick Mahomes just put it in a place that he couldn't get to, and it looked really good so far. But towards the back half of the second quarter, and even if you get into the third and fourth quarter, it really slowed down. After that, we only saw one more score from each team. Kansas City gets a field goal right before half, going up 17-7. But then the second half, there was plenty of opportunity for the Ravens to be able to get ahead and even win this game. But they kept missing on opportunity after opportunity. The defense was able to stop the Kansas City offense. I mean, they only gave up 123 total, 50 on that final drive. But compared to over 200 in the first half, they made a lot of improvements, really slowing down that Kansas City offense, giving Baltimore's offense and Lamar Jackson plenty of opportunity to come back and win the game. But Baltimore kept finding new ways to not score. They were finally able to hit on a big pass play to Zay Flowers outside of the one in the first quarter. Zay goes, kind of wiggles around, gets a first down, gets into the red zone, but then gets called for a taunting penalty, backing them up. And then eventually, later in the drive, he gets the ball once again and tries to make up for it. But here comes L'Jarius Sneed punching the ball out just inches away from the goal line. Kansas City recovers in the end zone and becomes a touchback in favor of the Chiefs. Later on, you see Zay Flowers even kind of get frustrated on the sideline, and he ends up cutting his hand and hurting himself. And it's like, you're a young receiver, you're very talented, but it kind of felt like the moment got a little too big for him, and he got too big in the head, and it just kind of costed him, and then it even costed the team on that drive in points. Because here's the thing, I would understand if you're trying to reach for it, if it's a third or a fourth down, but the fact that it was 2nd and 8 from the Kansas City 9-yard line, you already had the first down. It could have been 1st and goal. I get you were trying to score to make up for your dumb penalty earlier in the drive, but there was no need to do all of that. He tried to play hero ball, and it just didn't work out. And then later on, you see in the next drive, Lamar Jackson, he was throwing all over the day. It felt very uncharacteristic of the Ravens to throw that many times. You saw Lamar Jackson, even though he ran quite a few times on pass plays, he still threw the ball 37 times compared to Patrick Mahomes' 39. It was very uncharacteristic by the Ravens to do that much, and it really threw them off in my eyes. Even on that final drive that they had a real attempt to make a nice comeback, Lamar Jackson forces the ball to Isaiah Likely, who for some reason was calling for the ball in the middle of the field. I don't know if he didn't see the other defenders near him, But he had a guy trailing, and then he had a safety coming up and another quarter coming over the top. And they all, even though it was not looking good, it could have been called a pass interference. The fact that the safety intercepts the ball way ahead of the play, it just didn't work out. I don't know why Lamar Jackson was even trying to force it into triple coverage, but nevertheless, Kansas City comes out on top and goes to their fourth Super Bowl in 5 years with a 17-10 win. Again, going back to the pass attempts, it was very odd of me to see Baltimore throw it that often because they're so heavy of a run team. Lamar Jackson, I know he's made a lot of improvements throughout his career, becoming better and better each year as a passer, but his God-given ability isn't throwing like he's Josh Allen, like he's Drew Brees, like he's Patrick Mahomes, like he's Tom Brady. His God-given ability is with his legs. They should have been able to run the ball more often. The fact that on first down, they had 20 different times that they had called pass plays. Did all of them go for pass attempts? No, because Lamar would end up scrambling. But the fact that 20 different times you initially were going for a pass play, I don't know what you were doing. You had them on the ropes. You only ran the ball on first down with your running backs 3 different times for 17 yards. One of them went for a 15-yard gain, so the other 2 went for a total of 2 yards. But the fact that you didn't give Justice Hill, give Gus Edwards enough carries on first down and kind of keep the Kansas City offense honest, or the Kansas City defense honest, it really threw off the game plan for Baltimore. I'm wondering if that was just something that they did later on in the game and they felt like they needed to get back into it right away and they needed to rush it, try and get back because they saw how fast Kansas City got to an early lead and maybe they were able to do it again in the second half. But there was no need to do that. It was just way too much. You saw Zay Flowers have a dumb penalty. You saw them try and go for it way too many times, throwing the ball. It just did not work out for Baltimore. And now you see Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes and company go to yet another Super Bowl. Moving on to the 49ers versus Lions. It went on early for the Lions. They got to an early lead. Who would have thought that? Because you see such a good running game from the 49ers, you would think, okay, they're going to be able to keep up pretty early. Well, no. Detroit goes out to an early 14-0 lead. You see an end around by Jamison Williams go for a 42-yard touchdown. Then you see on their next drive, David Montgomery punches it in from 1 yard out, giving them the 14-0 lead late in the first quarter. And then Jahmyr Gibbs even scores on the ground himself as the Lions went up 24-7 in the half. By halftime, you saw 147 yards rushing by the Detroit offense, 3 total rushing touchdowns by 3 different guys, and there was only 131 total yards for San Francisco. When it came to Purdy, Brock Purdy, he struggled a little bit in the first half. He was getting hit with a mix of different pressures, whether it was coming from Aiden Hutchinson, who batted a couple of passes on the 49ers' first drive of the game offensively. You would see it coming up the middle with McNeil or maybe someone else off the other side of the edge. But it really kind of got to him. And you even saw Josh Pascal hit Brock Purdy's hand as he was throwing the ball. So it kind of got underthrown and then was intercepted and led to one of the touchdowns in the first half. Now, what was interesting was even though the 49ers were down 24-7, a 17-point deficit in an NFC Championship game, we've seen plenty of leads get diminished by teams either in the regular season or in the playoffs. But the fact that we were so concerned with the Niners, they were down 17. We had never seen them down this bad before. Usually they're a team that's up by 17 at the half. So the fact that the roles were reversed so much, it was kind of a culture shock for us as fans. But despite the big lead by the Lions, they committed to the run game and they still stuck with Deebo Samuel. They stuck with Christian McCaffrey. They didn't try to throw downfield all game like you'd seen with the Ravens. They committed to the run game. They were able to score early on, force a couple of drives to get halted by the Lions. And eventually, by the time you got to the fourth quarter, it was a tie game. And then you even saw the 49ers take the lead by 10 late in the fourth. You get another touchdown by Jamison Williams late, but it wasn't enough as the 49ers were able to come out on top 34-31. One thing that I had really noticed in the game for Detroit was the fact that even though they were going on kind of third and medium, third and deep, like third and 8 or so, you would still see them throw underneath, throw it to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and trust their guys to just make plays. You even saw Jahmyr Gibbs on a 3rd and 12 take a stretch to the left and get just enough 12 and a half yards for the first down, and even tried to hand it off to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was in the backfield for a rush attempt. But you can only do that so often and have so much success. I'm wondering if they were doing those type of plays to set up 4th downs, because we know how aggressive Dan Campbell can be on 4th downs. But you need to try and go and throw at the sticks. You can't have a 3rd and 8 and only throw it 5 yards down the field and hope your guy can consistently get you that first down by trying to make a guy or a couple of defenders miss. It's just not going to be something that's a recipe for success. Now, there was a lot of heat to Dan Campbell, the head coach of the Detroit Lions, for going for multiple times in field goal range in the second half when they had the lead. But contrary to that opinion, I actually believe that those were good calls. You saw Josh Reynolds have a rough day. He missed on a big 3rd down that ended up having to go for a punt for the Lions, so it resulted in no points. He dropped that, but then he also dropped one of the 4th down plays. They threw it past the sticks like I was hoping for, and it was going to be an easy first down, but he just drops the pass and it leads to a 49er score. But then on the second one, it feels like, okay, that one you should have gone for, or you should have kicked the field goal. But here's the thing. You still had a good pass play. I saw Jamison Williams go from the right to the left on a drag route, and even though it was in zone coverage, if Jared Goff wasn't getting pressure up the middle and had to roll out right because of the early pressure where the left side of the offensive line just got manhandled, it would have been an easy first down, even though it was underneath, under the sticks. So the calls that they had made, in theory, went well. It's just the execution by the offensive line and the receiver not being able to catch the pass is what led to the bad plays and the bad results. It's not necessarily about did you make it or did you not. It's was the play that you were calling in that situation and against the defense that you were going against, was it a good matchup? It's not always going to work, but you have to play the percentages. And I felt like even though it's in a game where you're still up, I think you need to be aggressive in that sense, because you saw Christian McCaffrey and you saw the 49ers offense. They were continuing to gain momentum and take it for their own. So if you're Dan Campbell, I don't blame you at all for going for it on those 4th downs, even though they would have probably been field goals. You can't count those as guarantees, because we've seen plenty of field goals miss wide left or wide right. We even saw Jake Moody on the first drive of the game for 49ers. He kicked the 48-yarder and he had missed. So there's no guarantees. So I actually liked and agreed with the opportunities that Dan Campbell was presented with and decided to go for it on 4th down. Unfortunately, it did not work out, and now we see the 49ers and the Chiefs play in the Super Bowl for the first time, or the second time in the last 5 years. Last time we had seen it was back in the 2019 season. But now that we've got a couple of weeks to prepare for this big-time matchup for Super Bowl 58, we can also look at this week for the Pro Bowl, as it'll play on Sunday. Kickoff is going to be at 2 o'clock. We see a couple of New Orleans Saints. Initially, we had only seen Rashid Shaheed make the Pro Bowl roster as a kick returner, but because of a couple of substitutions, Jason Kelce now retiring, and because Fred Warner is a part of the San Francisco 49ers, he is going to be in the Super Bowl, so he's not going to be available for the Pro Bowl. Left a couple of spots open, and you get to see Demario Davis and Eric McCoy also get to represent the black and gold in the Pro Bowl. So now we go from 1 to 3 Saints going to Orlando, Florida. So that's always a good sign to see. Also, since this is Cleats and Sneaks, we talked about cleats the whole time. Let's look to the hardwood, as we are now going to be looking at the All-Star break. It's coming up pretty soon, and we were able to see who the starters were. Looking at the East, we got to see for the guards, it's going to be Indiana Pacers point guard Tyrese Halliburton, while the other guard will be occupied by Bucks Damian Lillard. Another Buck made it to the starter, of course, with Giannis Antetokounmpo, while Boston Celtics forward Jason Tatum fills the 4, and then the 5 will be Joel Embiid. Looking at the West starters, it's going to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the OKC Thunder, Luka Doncic for the Dallas Mavericks. LeBron James will play the small forward position for the Los Angeles Lakers. Kevin Durant will be at the 4 for the Phoenix Suns. And then Denver Nuggets, the best player in the world at the moment, Nikola Jokic, is going to round out the starters for the West. Then looking at the NBA standings really quick, it's been interesting. The Pelicans were always kind of flirting between that 4 and 6 seed, but because of a rough 3-game stretch where they lost to the 1 seed Boston Celtics most recently, the number 2 seed in the East in the Milwaukee Bucks, and the OKC Thunder, that drops them now to the 8 seed in the Western Conference, while the Thunder, at the time, they were the 1 seed. So it was a very rough stretch, but now that they've lost 2 in a row, they have now dropped to the 3 seed in the West. Don't forget to like the video and hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications as well. That way you know when we upload any of our podcasts, whether it's this one with Cleats and Sneaks or 4 Tire Change with D-Lo or even the Miguez Mindset. We've got plenty of good content for you with plenty of different topics to talk about. But that's going to be it for now. We'll talk to you next week as we preview Super Bowl 58 between the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Until then, I'm your host, James Mesh. Talk to you next time.